In this video, I'm wondering, are modern cameras just too complicated? Well, let's find out. Roll titles. Bear with me a second, I'm just going to take a photograph. I'm here at Tork and Tarn this afternoon, one of my favourite places. I'm just going to take a photograph of a duck which is about 20 feet away on the water. Just bear with me. So let's see, aspect ratio I'm going to set at a 4:3 picture size. I want 20 megapixel. I'll shoot it in RAW, I think. Let's see, photo style, I'll set the photo style to standard. I don't need filtering on it. I want an RGB colour space. Metering mode. I think I'll set the metering. Just bear with me. And look, it's the duck's there. I'll not be a second. Multimeter. I think. I'm going to go for animal recognition. That's what I'll do. Eye dynamic. I'll leave that off. Eye resolution off. It doesn't need red eye removal. I'll put the ISO to auto ISO, I think. Let's see. Stabilize. I'll put the stabilizer. I haven't forgotten about you. Right. Okay. And I want it to single shot, and I want it to speed priority. I'll set the speed to about 1,000th of a second. It's a bit dark, so I'll put a little bit of overx. Where's the duck gone? Disappeared. Never mind, I'll come back to taking the photograph later. Isn't it a bit silly these days? Cameras are so complicated that before we can take the shot, we have to waste 5 minutes going through everything, just checking that it's right. Before we take the subject, are we going to do it, pre-do it at home before I come out? But the duck's, it's about 100 metres away now, and I've missed the chance from a photograph. Well, that's taking the fun out of photography, isn't it? And we keep on saying about having fun with photography, but is it fun going through menus and trying to set up different modes? I even try to work out different things. Oh, sorry, my hair's blowing away. I've had it cut, but it's starting to blow because it's a bit breezy. It seems a bit silly when we're wasting all this time trying to get the camera set up, and we've lost the actual thing that we're trying to take a photograph of. And I wonder these days if the overhype and the over-marketing on cameras is just making cameras far too complicated. Now, that's my G9. Wonderful camera. It's got all sorts on it, absolutely all sorts on it. And I was chatting to somebody this morning about it, and he said, Brian, I'm fancying going for the G9 Mark II when it comes out. I said, what have you got in a minute? G9, he says. I said, right. He says, it's a lot of money. I said, yeah, it's a lot of money, but it's a good camera for the money. He says, yeah. He said, there's a lot on it. I said, yeah. I said, well, what's making you want to go for it? Well, it's got all sorts on it. He says, fantastic, phase detect autofocus. So what do you mainly take photographs of? He said, old buildings. He said, old buildings, architecture. I love architecture. I said, well, how's the autofocus on the G9? Oh, it works a treat. So why do you need a phase detect autofocus for what you're doing? He said, do you ever have sort of high-speed moving things, which are things coming towards you and all sorts of things at speed? Are you? No. He says, I just do buildings and maybe the odd family shot. I said, okay then. So what do you actually adjust on your camera? He said, well, not much. He says, I'll go out. I know basically what I want to do. He says, the hardest thing is on just getting some low light shots. I said, right, okay. I said, so is the ISO on as the noise from the ISO on the G9 too much for you? He said, no. He said, I just use a prime lens and open it up more. He says, I can get the shots well and keep the ISO well below sort of 800. So why are you wanting the G9 Mark II? And that set the conversation. Why are we looking into all these different modes, different bits and pieces? Do you necessarily need starry autofocus if you're not an astronomical photographer? Astronomical photographer? I think that's right. Why do you need starry autofocus on that? Well, you probably don't. If you don't need, you know, do you need 80 megapixel on the high-res mode? Oh, no, particularly that, and do everything handheld, he says. So what is it you want from it? And we couldn't actually decide what was the real reason that this guy wanted a G9, apart from the fact all the hype had said that you need a G9. This is the new thing. This is where we're going to be going. And that really did worry me, because I think we're getting away from the essence of why we take photographs. I've just said that. I've just had the duck, which was over there. It was a few metres away, and now it's... I can't actually see it. It's so far down the lake. But I missed my opportunity by setting the camera up. Now, I know when I see the next one come past, the camera's now in the right mode to do it. But I also had to have a skill set to know what I was talking about, what I was doing on that, what I was adjusting. And I personally think that probably 90% of photographers who have decent cameras never take them off some of the auto modes, especially things like the P mode or the little green full auto. I think that an awful lot of them shoot them just like they would a camera phone. And I said to this guy, why do you want the G9 as well? He said, well, it's 25 megapixel, it's much better. Image quality is going to be fantastic. But the image quality really doesn't change that much. The G9 does fantastic image quality. My GX8 does fantastic image quality. In fact, there's very little image quality difference between the GX8 and the G9, except the G9's got different modes on it. And that set me thinking, why do I shoot with a pro-level camera? Why do I shoot with something a G9 or an EM1 Mark 1 or Mark 2 or whatever? And the big reason for me for shooting professional cameras is the fact that they are well built. They will do a lot of shutter actuations before failure. But I'm going out and doing the things that I need to do. That's what I'm interested in. Now, when I was shooting professionally up to about 2020, before all the silliness started, my main things were doing portrait work and doing commercial. Now, for portrait, I didn't need any of the gizmos. Maybe if I had a really good autofocus, I would use that. But a lot of the time, I'd use manual because it was just as easy and just as quick. But if you have a good autofocus, which will go onto an eye autofocus and get it onto that, that would make the things a little bit easier. But I started my photography career off with an Olympus OM1. There's a video above to my old Olympus OM1. Not the modern OM1, the film one. It was fully manual. It had a manual aperture. It had manual speed, film speed. You didn't get much in the way of ISO out of it because you're limited by your film stock, and the film stock past 400 was ridiculously bad. And most of it I was shooting down, if I was doing slide work, and I was shooting the equivalent of an ISO of 64. So I was doing that as a professional and getting money for it and getting some really good results, and the bride and groom were always happy with it. I had 36 exposures per roll of film, so I couldn't just shoot willy-nilly. I couldn't do high-speed shots easily. In fact, I had a high-speed camera battery grip. Well, it wasn't called a battery grip, but it was a speed grip, and that was giving me 3 frames per second, and I thought it was fabulous. But I was getting really good photographs out of it. I was getting the quality, but I had to learn how to do it. Now, I think a lot of the facilities now are to try and get people so they don't have to do so much learning. It's there on a plate for them. It makes it easier. Now, that can make it fun because you don't have to work so hard. But it can also make it so complicated because whenever I speak to people who aren't pro photographers or aren't highly enthusiastic photographers, the people who bought a camera because it seemed a good idea and that's what you should buy, very few of them know what any of the facilities do or how to use them. And that worries me because what happens with an awful lot of those, they get put away in a box after a while because people are getting just as good results from their iPhone or from their mobile phone because they're not using the creative things on the camera. And a lot of the creative things on the camera could be done with a fully manual camera. Remember that. It's the fact that you can change things away from the automation which makes it special. But I don't need that for the majority of stuff. Now, don't get me wrong. I know the sports photographers need some of the fancy modes. I know that the nature photographers need some of the fancy modes. I don't disagree with that. But it does seem as if we're trying to squeeze a quart into a pint pot. We're giving everything into this. These little tiny boxes, which are basically just little computers, are being filled up with so many things. It's untrue. Really is. And I think that that could be detrimental to photography as a whole. Now, I took this out, and I've been trying to get pictures of the ducks on the water here. But this morning I took my GX1 out. It doesn't have an EVF. It does have automation things on it, but it is an older camera, 16 megapixel. And I've got some great shots, but I had such fun by taking it out and using it this morning. And I think that's what we maybe are losing track of a little bit. So let me know what you think. Do you think we need all of these fancy gizmos, all these fancy modes on our cameras? Does it make you a better photographer by having them? Let me know in the comments below. I'm really keen on hearing about it. I know from me, I do buy these cameras because I do like my pro cameras, but I use 1/10 of what's on them. And I tend to use more than an awful lot of other people do. So let me know in the comments below. I really would like to know what you think about whether cameras are just overcomplicated. I got my old Canon 7D out, my EOS 7D out the other day, and I was playing around with that. And I think it's got, what, has it got 42 points or is it 9 points autofocus? I think it might have 42 points. It was not many. Of course, it doesn't have an EVF. You look straight through the lens. Very little indication of what's coming back. So the skill level you needed on that compared to what I've got in these Micro Four Thirds cameras is still huge. But I had fun with them. As I say, when I was shooting photography, when I was doing professional photography, I didn't need half the bits and pieces. When I was in the studio, for instance, I was using totally artificial light. I didn't use anything other than manual mode and manual flash mode to get my photographs. But I was doing professional shots which I made good money out of by selling, and they worked well. When I was doing some press photography, I was a media officer for a couple of different organisations, and part of it involved going out and taking photographs of different events as a press photographer, not the newspaper sort of paparazzi type photo, but I was going out there doing a lot of these events. I didn't use anything. I had a long lens. I had a super zoom's great because you can get very close and very far without having to swap lenses. You can do everything. Speed was of the essence on that, and a good autofocus was really worth it. But beyond having that and exposure compensation, I was using aperture priority or speed priority most of the time, and I didn't really need anything more. And I found that the rest of the stuff just got in the way because you'd set something, a really fancy mode on, which is fantastic for that one shot, but then you've got to take it off again to take the other 99 shots that you want to take, and then put it on for one shot maybe. And a lot of that can be done in post-production. I know I hate post-production, but if it's for one shot, it's worth it. So that's my take on it. I think personally that modern cameras are just becoming far too complicated for most people's needs. I'm not saying that people can't use them, can't learn how to use them, but do you really want to? Is that the fun of photography for people today? It's not the fun of photography for me. Let me know, as I say. Also, I'd like to thank these wonderful people here who are my Patreon patrons who make this channel possible. And also, if you don't want to be a patron and join in that way, there's two different levels of patronage, by the way. One very simple, and the other one gives you a few more benefits. Like the Sir Abbas video, which I just put up, which they saw 2 weeks before everybody else did. And so if you haven't seen that, it's worth checking out. It's a gorgeous place. But if you'd like to just give a one-off, just to give a bit of help to the channel, buy me a cup of coffee or whatever, there's a PayPal link in the description below, and also below there's a super thanks if you want to do it via that way. But anyway, thank you very much for all the support I get. Till the next time though, keep on taking your camera out, keep on having fun with your photography, and try and keep it simple. See you now. Bye-bye.